My name is Jason Collins. I'm an assistant professor in the anthropology department here at UT. And I want to start by thanking all of you for coming and joining us for lunch today. And I want to thank especially the folks at the Rapoport Center who have been central to making this possible. Khushi Kabir is here as part of the Rapoport Center's Visiting Practitioner program, and it's a real privilege and pleasure to be able to bring exciting folks like her in to speak with us and share things about their work. Khushi Kabir is, first I should say, an old friend, someone that I've been working with for the last 10 years. She is well known throughout Bangladeshi civil society. She likes to call herself a professional troublemaker, and hopefully what she'll share with us today is some of that trouble. She's a professional troublemaker on many different fronts, many of them productive. The first one, and the one through which I first got to know Khushi, is through the organization that she is the coordinator and director for, and one of the founders of Degradation, which is an organization that translates from Bengali as we do it ourselves. It's a non-hierarchical, decentralized organization that advocates for landless groups and landless rights across a number of different issues, whether related to questions of state or questions of development, questions of companies coming in and land grabbing, and a whole range of other questions. Degradation also works very much on social questions in Bangladesh, questions around gender equality and gender rights, questions around access, especially to common government-owned land, Kash land. And it's an organization that those of you who know me know that I'm somewhat of a development skeptic. Working with Degradation is an organization that makes me feel nostalgic. I'm like a true believer for many of the promises that development organizations often extend, but often rarely tend to fulfill in practice. Beyond Degradation, Khushi is active in a number of different arenas within Bangladeshi civil society. She's a visible and a loud voice for the pro-democracy movement, which we'll be talking to us about today. She was, in 2005, one of the 1,000 women collectively nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for women. And she is the coordinator in Bangladesh of 1 Billion Rising, an organization which seeks to push the question of gender equality and gender empowerment in a number of different domains. I won't delay you anymore with the discussion of the many exciting things that Khushi does, although I'm sure that there will be plenty of time to get into that in the actual conversation and in her talk. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Khushi Kabir.
Like I'm a pop star or something. Thank you very much for having me. Can people in the back hear me? Yeah, okay, great. I'll remember to throw my voice, otherwise I tend to talk to this. Yeah. I want to thank the Rapoport Center, the University of Texas, for inviting me to talk. This is my first visit to Texas. Not to the US, but to Texas. And having good friends here makes it even more interesting for me to come. Yeah. I'm glad you identified yourself.
Austin is not Texas though, but anyway.
And especially Austin, yeah. Especially Austin. I've been in, hello, come in. I've sort of grown up in the 60s, which was a time of passion for a lot of people, hope, wishing to change and believing that we could change. So it was really, I think, exciting times to be young in the 60s. In 1971, we had the liberation war in Bangladesh, where I think anyone who lived in Bangladesh was affected by it. And despite all the atrocities, the genocide that was committed, the people who were in the country were committed enough to feel that they would win the war, and they were willing to take whatever risks were needed for that war. The reason I mention this is those were times of, despite everything around you being quite hopeless, globally too, you had both sides. You had Chile and you had Vietnam and you had many other things to, combat with. But you had resistance everywhere. You had people resisting, and I don't know. So this was something that, you believed and felt so much. Immediately after the independence of Bangladesh, I joined an NGO which was working at doing rehabilitation work in a very, very remote rural area. I was somebody who was brought up in a city and did not really even spend a night in a village before I went there. I graduated in painting and drawing, fine arts, so nothing to do with what I'm totally engrossed in now. But I think that 5 years in that institution gave me a lot and taught me a lot. So in '72, I joined this organization that was helping in rebuilding Bangladesh, and I was thought that I would be sitting in the Dhaka Center, helping write the reports, liaising with the government and other agencies, and doing general dog body work around this town. But I felt I was making a decision around '73 to whether I'd go back to painting. So I felt I couldn't do that unless I'd go and stay in the village and experience the village. So I went and started living in one of the most remote villages, which took an overnight train, a 2-hour bus ride, a 5 to 6 hour launch ride, and then in winter 10-mile walk, and in summer a 4-hour on a rowboat to get to the village. So it was where there was no electricity, obviously, but that remote area was totally burned during the '71 war. And a lot of the people living there were Hindus, so they were even more affected. And that sort of changed my total path. I decided I'd like to stay there. I understood so I think that was my best university ever and best learning experience. The reason I mention all that is to put into context what the situation was. In those days, we still questioned when development was decided upon as being the right path, and people didn't just jump into bandwagons. Those were the days when someone would read Illich and Franz Fanon, and Paulo Freire became a big guru for those who were in this. So we were not exempt from that. One thing when I started working there and I lived there, obviously the organization was a bit worried whether the villagers would accept me and how I would stay put in a place where there was no electricity or even toilets or proper drinking water, etc. And I think we both loved each other, both the villagers, and I loved the villagers too. And I learned a lot. I learned how development does not reach the people, and how what is on paper and what you learn about development and what you read about development and what the reality is totally different. So when people started talking about self-reliance, and microcredit became one of the major ways of trying to provide some kind of capital for people to start tilling their agriculture plots or doing any kind of market, whatever skills they had, whatever things they could make, productions they could do. I found that was very exploitative, and it created a very unequal relationship. So that was my first conflict. The second was the role of how the bureaucracies looked at people who were poor and villagers. Third was how within the villages, learned about feminism, I read The Second Sex, etc. But I felt it firsthand when I was living in the village as to what the gendered dimension was. So class, gender, and this was a Hindu majority village. So also saw how the government in particular and the majority ideology projected itself onto people who are considered, I don't like this word, but for want of a better word, minorities. And the villagers who were there were mainly fisher people, so they were the poorest and the lowest in terms of the hierarchy. So I began with working there and then later on moved because I disagreed with many things that many of the mainstream NGOs were doing. We started Nijira. And one of the things, that's when Jason said he met me, is we were known as the organizations we don't do credit, like everybody else does credit. Yunus gets the Nobel Prize, but we don't do credit. So when they came and said they wanted to do a study on microcredit, I said, but we don't do credit. So they said precisely we want to do it for this reason. We also started looking at the things of how production systems were changing for a market consumption. And one of the biggest fights, so one of the issues we fight with is microcredit. The second is shrimp aquaculture for exports. And we've seen what the shrimp aquaculture is doing for feeding a northern market basically. And I won't go into the details because I can go on all day, but it has anything you want to mention. You want to work. This is if you want to talk about human rights, take shrimp aquaculture as an example, and you can do a whole thing on the human rights angle. You want to talk about environmental degradation, the kind of the attacks on your system, on the ecosystems, and shrimp aquaculture will show how it does it. The poverty exacerbates, the violence against women exacerbates, all that. And what you eat over here, what you get, the produce, if you knew what went inside it, you wouldn't eat it. I'll just let everyone know where our website is, and then we have little links to certain people who've done certain YouTubes or studies, and then one can get much more about it. So, of course, being a woman and in Bangladesh, the gender dimension is very important as a feminist, and I do call myself a feminist very openly in Bangladesh. I don't have any problems about people, whether they like the term or they're not fond of the term. So, and democracy, I mean, those were all the principles and secularism. All the principles we thought we fought for. And we find that now, slowly, sort of a wearing away of all the principles that we believed in is happening. And current mainstream development paradigms, the projects that are coming into Bangladesh, are also now showing that no one is questioning. They're going back to the old 60s and 70s Green Revolution time, but naming it totally different projects. I see the same project we critiqued in the 80s and had big struggle and wrote huge petitions against and had people do a counter study to show how bad it was, then being rejected, suddenly coming up now in a new name, in the name of climate change, in the name of food security, and I learned later on the difference between food security and food sovereignty. So these are the issues that we started picking up more and more, and I think one of the he was saying that I'm notorious as an activist or something. What was the word you used?
Troublemaker.
Troublemaker. But I find my most useful role is when people get hauled off into jail, to the police station before they go to jail, because once you're in jail, you're in the law system and you have to get the right lawyers, etc. But when they're hauled into the police station, to rush to the police station and sit there till people are there's no charge sheet against them. And I find that useful, and I think most police stations now know me. So, at least, not just in Dhaka, because in the villages, a lot of the people that we work with the local community. So when they get hauled, I just rush back to there, etc. So given this situation, Bangladesh is currently going, and I'm sure all of you have read the newspapers, and this is not just true of Bangladesh, I think globally. It's going through the same thing that is happening in many places, where freedom of your own position and thought, which may not be what either the state or the majority of the population or the religious leaders or the financially influential people want, because they're all interlinked. You use one again. You use each one as a means of control. And the moment you start controlling, you can then, it's easier to go where you want to go, and you don't have anyone to question you. So I was saying that the projects are becoming the same, everything is becoming the same. There's no questioning anymore. There's no movements against this anymore. So, and we find more and more, and then 71 when we talked about secularism, that the separation of religion from state, that the state cannot have a religion, religion may be what people believe in personally. In our neighboring countries, we are seeing this happening with a different religion. In two neighboring countries with two different religions. A religion that we thought was full of peace, Buddhism, that how they can use Buddhism to absolutely, totally crush a different religious minority group, ethnic and religious. In India, in the US, in Europe, all over the world. So, in Bangladesh it's no less. Bangladesh, I'll just start with saying that Bangladesh was a country which, at the time of 71, I'm not even talking about 47, at the time of 71 we were almost 21% non-Muslims. Today, we are 9% non-Muslims. So a country which was based on secularism has moved in such a way that 12% of people who believed in a religion that was different from Islam felt that they could not stay in that country any longer. And that's a very sad state of affairs. It's not what we fought for. So less than a year ago, in fact, this April, 2 murders affected me very greatly. There had been people being killed for having their freedom of belief, for being brave enough and strong enough to write about questioning religion, about being an atheist, about questioning what religions are about, what beliefs are about. And there was also a movement in 2013 February, because there was the War Crimes Tribunal going on, which was for the first time looking at bringing to book the collaborators who were responsible for the murder of many people. I know it's something that's contentious in many countries, and when I go out I keep asking the same questions. But for those of us who lived through 71 and who lost so many people and who've seen what the ravages of the war were, we felt that there was a need for a closure. So there was this movement going on to ensure that the entire case, or the cases don't get stymied because there's external pressure so much, or not to go ahead with these cases. There was a huge movement. And that huge movement, whatever it was, it doesn't exist now, or its name, but it was some place where I found later on that a lot of the people who went there were people who would say that they were atheists, some who said that they were LGBT, some people who said they were religious. So some people who said they were living together, which in Bangladesh we thought never could happen. Okay, they wouldn't say it publicly on the stage, but when they talked to us, it would come up. And I thought, oh, here's a lovely place where people, whoever they can, it's just a place for gathering where people feel that they can speak up. And the numbers who came in February 2013 till, I don't know, mid-2013 or towards the end, were hundreds and thousands. It was not a small number. It was huge. So, since 2013, when the first murders started taking place against people who were bloggers, and I was wondering why bloggers were so, targeted. And I think because when I've been looking at how in the rural areas and villages, people are moving towards trying to indoctrinate you into a religious doctrination, a religious doctrine, a religious thinking. So when they choose you, they even dictate what your reading will be, what discussions you can go to. So it's, everything is quite, focused. But when you're blogging, you're on your own with that machine. And there are questions which would get raised in your mind, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous for those who want to control the minds of the people they take as their cadre. And I think they feel that that was one of the most dangerous methods. And so, like me giving a speech doesn't matter. People can just walk off. Next day they can come and say what she said, this is what's wrong with it, this is where I can tear it down, this is what's weak. But with blogging, you're into an interactive, because you're reading, you're questioning, and you're answering. So it was wondering why bloggers were getting killed. That was in my mind, we were having discussions. But just less than a year ago, the two murders that affected me made me write a post on my Facebook. I don't tweet, I don't have a Twitter account, I'm not a blogger. So very occasionally, if something does affect me, I use Facebook as a social thing of just to keep in touch with who's where, in which part, etc. I put my feelings down on a post, and after reading my reactions, I was asked by friends to expand on this, which then became an article. The two murders were only part of a series of brutal murders that were taking place and had taken place, and as we found, were continuing to be taking place in the following months and continuing until now as I write this. So bringing what I had written then and shared extensively a year back to the present, has the situation changed? Are there new elements to these brutal attacks? The questions continue to be raised as we try our best to grapple with the issues that concern us. And as I reread the article I had written, I found portions which has now come to my consciousness, brought into my consciousness new elements and new understanding, new methods and even new actors that made me go through this again. It's no longer something that's a single way of looking at things. There are many different actors, and I think we need to not look at things very simplistically, which many of us have tended to do. Nothing's black and white. The two people who were killed were not bloggers, the ones who affected me, or really bloggers. One was a professor from Rajshahi University who was hacked to death in the morning of April 23rd, 2016. And from what the information we received, that he seemed to be a quiet man, a man who was of a peaceful nature, a lover of music, and a committed teacher. As is the case with most Bengalis, he loved music, and he started a cultural hub in his home, where he lived, not far from the university. He was not a declared atheist, nor a blogger, not even an armchair or Facebook activist. So not one of the usual argumentative Bengalis, the usual picture of the intellectual that one sees. He was not one of those who were in the front lines of activism, never on talk shows. He was not a talk show star. Not one who wrote long op-eds about the state of affairs of the country. So why would he be killed? And that's what made me write, why was Professor Karim killed? I had never met him. I didn't know about him before. So his family, I mean, to me, he seemed like a typical example of a citizen of the land that I come from, the kind of people I grew up with. Encouraging music, culture, playing his favorite sitar. He loved the sitar. Reading books, but accepting of religion and responding. And he was very sensitive. We heard about his large donations to the building of the local mosque as a proof of this perception. And his daughter was very vehement in stating that he was a true believer, a full believer. And I find it very telling on our current state of affairs that we have to insist that we are believers to say that we are good, that the person didn't deserve to be killed. It's really telling. I mean, why do we have to do that? Why should it matter? Murder is a murder. A gruesome murder has taken place, and in all seriousness, no matter what one beliefs are or where one stands, we stand against the murder. So, why should you have to speak affirming your belief in a faith? I mean, that is very, 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 very telling of what the state of affairs are. No sooner than this murder shocked us, we heard the brutal killing on the evening of April 25th of two young men, Zulhas Banan and Mahbub Rabbi Tonai, at Zulhas's house at Kolabagan, in a very crowded locality in his own home. Zulhas was well known. Unlike Professor Karim, he was well known in the activist community. He co-founded the first and only LGBT magazine, Rumpan. And he tried to bring forth many issues and concerns. He tried to give a lot of people a lot of strength and support in saying that it's okay to be gay. It's okay to be lesbian. And his space was often, I'm saying this here with people who are in this room who knew him much better than I did. Knew him very well for many years. But he was, from what I had heard and the little that I had met him, a very gentle person. And the last conversation I had with him was, one of my friends from here said that on the 14th of April, which is the New Year's, there's a huge parade that goes on. And for the last 2 years, Zulhas and a whole group of people, they didn't have the courage to do a gay pride parade separately, but in this New Year's parade they would take part. And the police and authorities had asked them not to do this time, that the situation was problematic, and they decided not to do it, that you would join as it is, but it wouldn't be part of a visible group. People who had been with them before said that, everybody in the whole parade, in that carnival, it was like a carnival thing, always supported them and, ensured that they didn't get harassed or heckled. So just 4 or 5 people who didn't know that this had been cancelled went to the parade and were picked up by the police. So when I was asked, I rang up Zulhas. Zulhas said, there's no need to come. The police are releasing them. That's the last I had talked to Zulhas. But a few days later, just 11 days later, he and his friend get hacked in their own houses to death. So what then started getting us more concerned? Before that, there have been so many really people I knew personally, people I had heard of personally, people who I had read of and heard of. They had been killed, and the government did not feel it necessary in any of these situations to take the kind of role that they should be. The government has been trying to say that victims should be careful. I'm saying victims in quotes now, people who are being attacked, should be careful not to hurt the religious beliefs of the majority religion of the country. And to me, either passively or tacitly, by not acting or deliberately pandering to this kind of action, is giving into the fear factor of being brainwashed, and that is exactly what this kind of violence and intolerance that is being propagated continues to do so. You know, the first person who was the victim of a brutal machete attack in February 2013, only now, just before I came, the court gave a verdict against the killers. We went to the High Court, and the High Court has upheld the verdict. Let us see what the next situation will be. But I really ask myself this question, and all of us ask ourselves this question: can we see signs that there are any serious intentions to stop this from the side of the government? The confusing and, as I said, contradictory statements given by those in the government certainly do not give any sense that the government has any intention to act to suppress this kind of violence. And in fact, it seems to appease the killers rather than anything. And it is assumed that if you are a blogger, you are an atheist. And being an atheist is dangerous. And I think it is time, and this is something that this is what I want to keep on doing, is to stop this oversimplification. Why do people think that being an atheist is dangerous and not to be tolerated? Just as having a religion, whatever the religion may be, is normal and acceptable, and within that religion, whatever sect you may want to belong to is your own business. Not having a religion is also perfectly all right and shouldn't bother anybody else. It's an individual's decision. So this is not the Bangladesh we knew. And I'm not mentioning the general murders, rapes, sexual harassment of women in public celebrations, extrajudicial killings, all this is taking place. What I'm only trying to mention here is killing in the name of religion. And at the beginning, when I first wrote the piece, the modus operandi was very, very similar. It was machetes and killing. They carry a gun, but that was how it was used. The government would say that these are isolated incidents. The government's absolute denial of looking at it as part of a larger picture and something that should be taken cognizance of means that either the government is pandering for reasons that they want to remain in power and look at them as a group of people who would help them stay in power, or the government does not want to start questioning and looking at. Either way, I think we as citizens are the ones who have to ask ourselves this question. One of the people who was killed, Washikur Rahman Babu, one of his killers was caught by somebody who was a transgender, but the police let him go. Let the killer go, even if CCTV footage existed. So of course we start questioning, and as we also tell the government when we do get into any kind of a dialogue at any point, I think that they need a better script writer. They had such a poor script writer that nobody can even accept what they would like to say. I'd just like to mention a few facts. Not all those who were killed were bloggers, and not all bloggers are atheists, and not all active people in social media are either bloggers or atheists. They may be, they may not be, that is totally irrelevant. And my main question, which I keep asking, is under which article of the Constitution is it stated that no one can be an atheist in the People's Republic of Bangladesh? I do not see that anywhere. And so therefore, nobody has the right to take my life or to arrest me, because my Constitution has given me the right to be what I wish to be. We see what is happening here as in most other countries, where the Islamic nationhood is being developed, Islamic's perception of an Islamic nationhood. It's a feeling of insecurity, because the larger global world creates this insecurity. And I think there's something wrong that the young people or older people or any people of all colors, sects, denominations get influenced. So which means there's a lacking of an ideological dream, whereby people think this is the dream. And it's such a wrong dream. It's such a dream that's violent. It's a dream that's really taking away your belief. We have had peers who were murdered. We have had bomb attacks on, we have a very small, very minor Shia community, very, very minor. Mainly those who came from Bihar, and some were in major of the cities. But even in the procession of the Shias, a bomb gets thrown. We have now, recently, not just the killings, the new situations taking place, attacks on Hindu households in villages. A village which in 1971 no collaborator of the Pakistani army or the Pakistani army could enter in a place in Brahmanbaria, Asim Nagar. There, the kind of looting, arson and burning that took place is something we saw. I visited very soon after. In another area, indigenous communities who were fighting for the rights over their own ancestral land, their houses were burned and some were killed. We went to visit those areas also. So why is it that that there is a group, and the government is pandering to this, of feeling afraid of diversity? This diversity is something that needs to be celebrated, not feared. And I think when I see that the kind of people who have been, we've even had followers of the Sufi tradition, another teacher of the Rajshahi University whose only thing was that he believed and lived a Sufi life as a teacher of Bangla. But we have people who are publishers of books. I don't know if one would like me to mention, but one of our major icons was Avijit Roy, who started a blog called Muktobana, means free thinking, which encouraged people to write. They just visited their home in Bangladesh, visited their parents, visited the book fair, which was one of the most vibrant month-long fairs that we have. And they were brutally attacked. And two publishers who had published his book, one believes and followed what Abhijit believed in. He luckily escaped because the killers didn't realize he had two other people in his...
They published our books.
No, both of them published. Two publishers were killed on the same day at almost the same time. They choose a weekend. So I think one of them, the one who believed in what Abhijit believed in, and he's a writer too, he had two visitors, two writers in his office. And, you know, when they come in with the machetes, the thing is you have to be very quick. So they attacked them and left. One of them managed to send a message out. So immediately people came and immediate attentions were given, which was why they got saved. Another publisher who was a friend of Avijit from school days, they lived in the same area. He was killed in his office when he was alone, and his body discovered many hours later. His father is very clear to state, my son Deepan is not an atheist. Again, I don't see why. I know Abhijit's father, I know Deepan's father. And I've asked Deepan's father, why do you need to mention it? Does it matter? Killers are killers. And you mentioning it, does it in any way justify that it is not all right to be a non-believer? Why can't anyone be what they wish to be? Oh, sorry. Is there Okay, it's
I
probably
think
not.
it'll be okay.
But then there have been attacks on foreigners. One Italian who was working for an NGO, who was just walking home in one of the diplomatic areas and supposed to be under very good scrutiny, and the police station is just in front of where he was attacked and killed. And the other is a Japanese farmer, wanted to do an agriculturalist, who went and lived in a village and he converted to Islam. And he was also killed because he was a foreigner. So this kind of attack, and another Italian priest who's a doctor who people liked, they were doing that. As I wrote this piece 2 months later on July 1st in a cafe in Dhaka's, one of the most, it was an upmarket, quite an expensive cafe. 20 people were killed, of whom 9 were Italians. They were mainly, most of them were in the garment textile business. 7 were Japanese who had come there to do, and were engineers who were going to build a huge highway for Bangladesh. 1 was an Indian, 1 was a Bangladeshi American, and 2 were Bangladeshis. A few days after that, it took 24 hours for the army, the police, and everyone to try and get into this bakery, which was being held hostage by just a few handful of young people. 2 policemen were killed when they tried to move in. A few days later, there was the big Eid congregation. Eid is like a big celebration. And in Bangladesh, there is one village where they have, it's been known for years that they have the largest congregation, about 150,000 people gather for that Eid congregation. So there was an attempt to attack that congregation because the imam who leads the prayers, he's anti-Wahhabi. And I think for those of you who are here are not aware of the term, I would like you to read up and look at Salafi and Wahhabi. Wahhabi and Salafism is not something that existed in South Asia. I'll just be very brief about that. We had a different school of Islamic jurisprudence, law and practice. But now there is a certain, and the Wahhabis are only in Saudi Arabia and nowhere else. So suddenly this whole Wahhabi, they tried different times to try and move to different areas. But this new cult of trying to make everybody into true Muslims by making everyone into the Wahhabi is something that is new. So that's why this imam they were trying to attempt. But luckily, this time the government was prepared because 150,000 people being killed would have been disastrous. And so the government has started taking some notion of some way of looking at what needs to be done. And I think these are the questions that I had, that it's not just Islam that I'm talking about or Islamic bigotry. It's talking about why is this being allowed to prevail across the globe in whatever religion you may use, the majority religion that exists in that country. And for me, I do not see there's any contradiction between profits being made in the drugs, arms, smuggling, trafficking, sex industry, as well as these bigots who are doing the same thing. Because a lot of the arms is coming in through these kind of arm dealings. A lot of the discussions that are coming in are so anti-women. They almost, if you listen to some of the tapes which I have been listening to or seeing, it borders on pornography. The kind of imagery they try to create of women. So, I mean, that's what I wanted to say, that over here where we have a lot of questions, a lot of problems, we have situations with democratic norms, as is situation all over the globe now. You know, we elect somebody for 4 years or 5 years, and the person or the party you elect does not feel it necessary to even ask you that the new laws that they are making are what they, are what you as their, you know, as their voters really want. But I think it's time that we start talking about all these issues, and it's time for us to speak out, to fill in the blanks and make the links. As a woman, as a feminist, as a rationalist who believes in democracy, freedom of speech and thought, inequality in all fields, especially one's mind and thinking, freedom and security of one's movement and the right to our basic needs, including that of sharpening our intellect through knowledge and culture, I will definitely speak out. My mind is my own. It belongs only to me. Free to move where it wishes to go, and free to dream its own dreams, and free to express myself. I do not hurt others' ideologies or beliefs, just as I do not allow others to change mine or influence mine if it's not what something I don't believe in. So if I'm strong in my own belief, because it's mine as I have come to understand it, I should not think that if my belief is not so feeble that it can, somebody can, if they don't share my ideology, that it will get totally corrupted or it will get weakened. Why should the others do the same? Why can't they feel strong in their own thinking? So what is happening today now? Today, these groups are attacking police stations. The paramilitary groups that have been created to deal with these people, their outfits are being attacked. And yet the government is still in a mode of denial. They are looking at every incident as an isolated incident, instead of looking at the reality and what exactly happens. Recruitment of people to this kind of ideology is not just the poor or the uneducated or the rural. People were very shocked when they said, private universities, children from this school, which are so elite, they have gotten into this kind of this group. Because when there were those who were killed in the shootouts, or when they were attempting to blow out, and most of them committed suicide. They were suicide bombers. They found out who they were. So I think it is time that we start looking at all this in terms of a larger picture of what democracy really means globally. Does democracy really exist in our countries? Do we have a role in ensuring that what we see in our own lands does start getting changed? I think it's important that we need to look at things and most often look at what is contradicting the interests of the general people. Because I still believe, because I do work in the rural areas and in the villages, that if there is scope for discussion, if there is scope for openness, most people are not bigots. This obscurantist philosophy that is being pushed forward is not something that everybody would follow. I think I've taken a lot of time, and are there time for question answers or not?
Thank you.
So anyone who wants to, is anyone moderating, or do I moderate, or what would you like? Anyone? Just introduce themselves when they...
Yeah, so introduce yourselves.
Sure. I'm Dan Brinks. I'm a professor in the government department and here at the law school, and I co-direct the Rapoport Center. So thank you for coming. It's really an honor to be able to host you this way, and I'm glad that the program is a new one, and you're the first one to come under the program. So it's a great beginning. It's a great start. So thank you for doing that. I guess the question I have is, it picks up a little bit where you ended, although you referred to it a couple of times earlier, and that is, I agree with you that most people aren't bigoted or filled with hate and so on, and yet it seems to me that our politics have been producing leaders who tend in that direction more and more frequently. And I don't think we can just say, well, there are just a few people running around on the fringes who are doing these sorts of things, because it seems to me that these, not just in Bangladesh, obviously, but across Europe, in the US and elsewhere, it seems that the politics of sort of rejecting diversity, rejecting tolerance are on the ascendant. And I don't know from where you stand whether you have any explanations for that or any ideas as to why that's happening.
I think it's a question that's so broad and so deep. Both. It's. I think we're going through a phase in time when we only pick what we wish to pick. People like having leaders. And people like having leaders who stand up, who you can, sort of emulate. Over here you had Martin Luther King Jr., who you could look up to. We've had our own heroes. I think that, and then also, there were movements, as I said before when I started. It was a time when there were movements, when people felt there was hope. I don't see that kind of coming together now. Even when we had the Shahbaz movement in 2013, it didn't stay together. It didn't seem to gel together. I don't know, we have people, Bunna can maybe say a few words because she's lived, I've been part of it because I've been living there, but I haven't had to live through the fierce physical and emotional pain, and yet survive. I survive because I believe so strongly. But I think globally there's this change. When I look at the global situation and people start looking at Angela Merkel as one of the best statespersons we have, okay, so we've reached the stage now. But the politics of Angela Merkel is not the politics I would have followed. But she speaks out, so we're just so happy that there's somebody who speaks. So I don't know, I think globally we're going through a situation now that needs some kind of, maybe something like this is where we talk, few people, it can move. This is something that I'm trying to do very much within Bangladesh, in the rural areas with the people, because that not because I want to be a martyr. I think in the rural areas I'm not on the radar.
And the people that you work with at that sort of grassroots level, how do they feel about this politics? How do they react when?
No, they're very, they're people who are religious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they know that I'm not. So there's no rejection of me. Because a lot of people, the reason I'm saying it, a lot of middle class who live in the urban areas feel, you cannot state that you are not religious. You cannot state that you're a feminist. You cannot state that you are against the class system. So you don't state all that, especially religion and being feminist. These two things you don't. And they have an idea that feminists cannot be religious. They don't realize the different schools of feminists that exist and how we fight each other all the time. So it's, they're open for discussions, but we choose who we want to discuss with. They give us information as to how these inroads are being made. A lot of them are being made by migrant workers who come back with values, which they're imposing. But I have found that they're willing to get into discussions, which when I go back next time, I find that they're willing to challenge me on those discussions and take it further, which helps me clear my views much further. So like, the hijab was not something that was prevalent in Bangladesh. It's now absolutely, I've never, when I go down the streets now, I count. Do I see women, groups of women where nobody is wearing a hijab? There may be groups of women where women are not wearing the hijab, but there'll be somebody wearing the hijab. But now I'm trying to count, is there any group of women who are sitting together or talking or walking where nobody is hijabbed? And I don't see that. So we discuss also why is this new form of dress code coming into the country? How and why? What makes it so popular?
Is there, sorry, I don't want to monopolize.
I mean, I can do a long thing on that.
Do you think, say Saudi support for madrasas and so on, is that?
Yeah, that's part of it. That's part of it, but that's also the, you know, like at 193, the first when the Islamist group started getting more, 91 BNP came into power elected. 93, they started attacking NGOs. So they would cut down the trees, they would not give the burial rituals for women who had been members of NGO groups because it was haram. They would burn down schools. Now they don't attack NGOs anymore because they say this is for your present life, the life on earth. But we are going to take you for your real thing, which is the afterlife. And so, you know, they change the tactics. And they bring in all these different things like saying, sometimes practical things like, you know, your sari is not very clean or it's torn. Why don't you wear this? Nobody knows. You know, it's, what do you call it? It's sort of your class and, you know, gets blunted in this thing of everyone's wearing it. But of course it doesn't, because you have the designer hijabs and the fashionable hijab. Because no woman who's, you know, very wealthy would like to be associated as one with the garment worker or the worker in the village. So I think it's time for everybody to start looking at. I mean, the reason I had asked about Burna, because Burna has tried very hard to. She has a huge group of people who support her, and what she writes would be read much more than what I speak. So it's time, and for me also coming here was a good way of meeting you, so we can pool our energies together in whichever way we can to see what we
She's
can
the
do.
only person actually who I can still call from here. We never met before. And there are very few people, when the bloggers were killed one by one, then after we were attacked, my husband was killed, and you know, I was pregnant for 3 months. Survived with like 4 machete stabs and big fingers and all that. But after that, the spree went on for like one a month. They actually vowed to kill one a month.
Yeah.
So they did that for 4 months, and the Prime Minister actually stayed, what Khushi was mentioning, that stayed quiet for 4 months, not without a word. The Prime Minister Prime Minister's husband was a student of my father-in-law. So she called him that night
the phone,
of
yes.
the attack, secretly, and you know, sent her condolences and all that, but she made sure that that doesn't get, the media doesn't know about that. But Khushi is the only person who would actually dare, when those 2 publishers were, like one was killed, the other one was injured so badly, there wasn't anybody who would actually dare to go and stand by him. He was by himself in the hospital, and his wife was calling me and was like, you know, as soon as they let us go from the hospital, we don't know where to go, and the government is not going to give us any protection. What am I going to do? I called her. She was the only person who walked in right there, and I hear that a policeman asked her that you need protection, and she said, who will, like, you have never been able to give anybody any protection, and you're telling me that you'll give me protection. So,
Which is true, you had 2 presidents killed.
yeah, and the Prime Minister actually on the 4th month, when she was forced, after the 4th killing, she came out and she said the bloggers need to be careful about what they write. It was kind of like the big
Such
thing,
a, can you imagine? That was so maddening. It was as if, it's like when a woman gets raped, the first thing they ask her, what was she wearing, what time of the night was she walking, who was with her. It's the same thing. I mean, what were you writing that you got killed by the... I don't know, your question was so deep that it was... But this thing that we have to, I just feel that we need to have more discussions. I know we have it in South Asia. I do not have it so much in the global sphere. South Asia, there's a group of us that we share a lot together in terms of what we should be doing and how we should be doing and providing support systems. And in South Asia, the religions are different. Sri Lanka has a different religion. India, the majority religion is different. And India is so vast, each region is different. Pakistan has different, say.
What does it mean to be the leader of a non-hierarchical organization? and what does being in a non-hierarchical organization have to do with resisting Wahhabism and resisting unfair bureaucratic practices by the government? Like, why is it a non-hierarchical organization, one, and two, what does it mean if you're the leader of a non-hierarchical organization? How do you do that?
Okay, I won't say I'm the leader, I'll say I'm the public face of the non-hierarchical organization. I gave a talk where he was first, when I spoke about the organization I work with, Nijirapuri. It wasn't the same talk, so therefore he's asking, and we described it as a non-hierarchical organization, the NGO I work with. We feel very strongly that if you're talking about people getting together, especially the peasantry and people, and if I was working in the cities, I would be talking about people in the cities, then you've got to talk to about people learning to trust each other and work collectively together. That's the only way you're going to be able to make your voice heard. Otherwise, you're so low down in the ladder politically, economically, socially, that it's only a collective voice. And if the organization we work with has the same kind of hierarchical structures, we would never understand how to work with people that way. And we ourselves will not learn. So it's very important that the institution that the NGO I work with and belong to, and the groups of people that we are trying to help them to organize themselves to be much more aware and much more stronger in demanding their rights as citizens, in demanding and accountability, in demanding that they get all, they access all the, whatever they're supposed to get. So if we want to do that, we ourselves have to become non-hierarchical with ourselves. And I think it's easiest because what it does is, the decisions don't lie on one person. It's a collective decision. So I don't know why people like hierarchies. Because it's so much easier not to be hierarchical.
It's also, this kind of, and Khushi mentioned it may not be like this sort of authoritarian kind of model of,
Absolutely.
of the oppressed, that one is a catalyst, because of course one is by birth or by circumstance structurally has certain kinds of opportunities to go to college. But that does not mean that we are superior to her, but we have access to certain kind of knowledge.
Some
it's a matter
privileges.
of catalyst of certain kinds of people, and then it sort of starts from there. It's kind of, initially of course it is not always a certain kind of a dialogic situation. There are power hierarchies, but then slowly and gradually you try to undermine those kinds of things. Those are the ideal goals that one works with. And so, of course, there are ways in which, it's an issue of process, right? And it's an issue of commitment to a certain kind of, even if you call it utopian goal, but it is a certain kind of way in which one can't sort of just wish it away that we were not born on a feather bed and somebody is sleeping on the floor, but how to then mitigate that situation.
Exactly. Thank you, Kamran. Yeah.
Hi, Khushi. I was wondering if you saw any connection between the killings that have happened in Bangladesh to international relations between Bangladesh and other countries, maybe in terms of like policies of like the U.S. or Italy or Japan in Bangladesh. Since when you talked about it, it seemed like a lot of the victims came from Western countries. They're outside forces. I don't know if you saw any connection between that.
Because that was the first time the government was forced to wake up. I think the attackers also made a deliberate attempt of not just attacking and killing Bangladeshi citizens, but that they need to make their presence felt, because when you're part of a huge organization that believes that you're going to be taking over power, you need to make your presence felt at some point and create the fear factor. So to get the government to recognize, they decided to start attacking expatriates. So now that restaurant is a very upscale kind of a restaurant. So a lot of very rich Bangladeshis or expatriates go there. It was the month of Ramzan, that's why they didn't have very many Bangladeshis there. If it was not the month of Ramzan, it would have had more Bangladeshis over there. But they decided to, it just happened that because it was Ramzan, there was less people. So, and the two groups were one was Italian and one was Japanese. I don't think it was targeted as Japanese as such or Italians as such. It's just that let's make headlines. And so the government was forced to take cognizance of that. So much so that now Bangladesh has become a non-family posting for people who are posted there. I mean, it's not that we are getting bombed and attacked and killed all the time, we're everywhere, but it's become such that it's been demarcated, earmarked as a non-family posting.
Hi, my name is Homer Man. I'm an undergraduate anthropology student, but I've been organizing around immigrant rights for the past 5 years. And my question is, how are the youth organizing in Bangladesh, and what are the issues they're working on, and what are some leaders or organizations to follow?
There are many youth who are working in Bangladesh and working with youth, but it depends. Some are very non-political or apolitical. I mean, they're talking about more in terms of welfare benefits. Let us raise some funds so that a kid can go to school. You all each try and ensure that there's some schooling available. Some would say that but there are others who would try and work in trying to look at systems and structures, but those are very few who do that. Those are ones that are usually belonging to older student alliances and unions and organizations who have a past history of analyzing systems and structures. But generally, there are a number of youth organizations that have come up trying to bring in people to come together, but they're not questioning as such the structures, the systems, and what is happening. But it's good that they're coming out, it's good that they're talking, it's good that they're bringing people together, but I wish that they went beyond.
Do we have to end at 10? At 2? Is that the sort
2
of?
is when we're scheduled to end.
We can go 5.
Oh, maybe we can take another question or one or two more questions. And then... Or I can ask a question.
Leading question?
Would you like to lead the
ask
question?
you enough questions?
Yeah, I can ask a leading question if you'd like. I wanted to follow up on Daniel's question. In part because it seems like the Holy Bakery tax marked a shift in strategy of militant groups by attacking, effectively hitting the government where its main revenue streams come from garments and development. It forced a different kind of response. Whereas previously, as you've mentioned, Hasina's response has largely been with, well, it's very bad, we don't support killings, but then again, these people are deviant to a certain extent and they should be careful. Whereas post-Holi, we know there's been a tremendous military mobilization around trying to quash Islamist groups, and the most recent attacks have been more overtly against the government, grenade attacks against police stations, et cetera, et cetera. So I was wondering, building on that, if you could say something about the relationship between state structures and these Islamist groups itself, because to a certain extent they seem like, on the one hand, the Awami League has been able to use this as a way of reasserting its legitimacy in a state that it's recently recreated as a one-party state. And on the other hand, it is providing the sort of visibility for militant groups to continue to be in the public sphere. So I was wondering what your take on that
Yeah,
is.
there's I'll respond quickly because of time limits. The two things. One is, yes, it has forced Hasina to recognize that the issue exists. Before it was isolated incidents and also pandering. But now, I mean, if you look at the recent, that suddenly now the agencies know where the hideouts are. How did they not know these hideouts before?
Right.
But what is worrying is it sometimes takes them 48 hours or more to be able to, within quotes, use the word flush out, 4 to 6 people in a flat. They were good enough to be able to, what's the word? Evacuate a lot of the other people who were in the different flats in that same building. But this one flat, which had about 4 people and 5 kids, 2 couples and 5 kids, all of them who were killed. It took them almost 70 hours before the army could go there. So now, yes, they are being able to find out where they are, and then it gives the public and citizens a sense of complacence that yes, the government is now serious, but also the question is, how effective are they? Do they need more training? Why are they not getting more training? Do they not know, or are they really giving them a leeway? And the question, second part I'll just answer but very briefly. We see that there are 3 forces that the government really listens to. One is the business community, one is the military, and the other are the religious forces, especially the Islamic religious forces.
If I may just say one thing, the dilemma for human rights discourse workers, activists like yourself and others is another one. I know, at least in Pakistan, that the state has their own version of Islam is that they cultivate another thing. But what has also happened recently, as in Bangladesh, is that they have captured people and perhaps they don't trust the court system to get a certain kind of a legal verdict, and there are encounters. So even yesterday in Pakistan, the person who was ostensibly captured for a bomb blast in central Lahore, he and others were killed in an encounter.
Absolutely.
Now that becomes, those are people who, in my own politics, are people who are, quote unquote, not people I would ever support, or rather they are on the other side of my politics, but yet they are also have certain kinds of legal rights under the constitution that you and I want to defend, right?
Right.
So, and that is another gray area which we can't discuss now, but these things have become so popular yes, it was a bizarre story, and this is a story that repeats every 5 months, that the police was taking these 3 people, they were attacked, they were released from police custody, but then more police came, and they killed 10 people.
Yeah.
Now, this is all, of course, it's a classic encounter extrajudicial killing, right? So it's an issue that,
In
that takes on.
Actually, in Bangladesh, the crossfire.
The same thing
Yeah,
happened.
crossfire.
Same thing happened.
Crossfire encounter, it happens in Colombia, it happens in
Yeah,
everywhere.
Yeah, we just say the crossfires without the other cross,
Yeah, right.
It's one-sided.
The attackers were
The Guerra Sucia, this is what it is, right?
Exactly.
Classic.
You start asking yourself, why are these people doing these stupid things that they get
Yeah.
shot?
So you wonder why they don't
Hollywood
want the
film.
information to come out, because if we went through the real true process of law, you would get a lot more information and coming out.
Precisely, it's a weird kind of thing of news letting being out in this bizarre narrative. Like when in the 80s our friend would get captured, could disappear, we would put a news in that someone was captured because they were stealing a cow. But in that news, at least we had a certain kind of there could be a habeas corpus appeal, right? At least that person was notified he was captured. Like it disappeared, but we would just, through friendly journalists, put in the thing that person was captured because of stealing a cow or, some kind of stupid thing. But that was a very different But they also create these narratives of, you know, bizarre kinds of encounters. They have to justify murder, but they have to do it in this.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting way that these, but yeah, no, I'm just sort of
No,
supporting
no,
what
no,
you're
it's
saying.
absolutely,
The
absolutely.
dilemmas of human rights workers like you.
Well, around the whole, I think around the whole world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I have much more contacts with people
No,
in South
as
Asia.
Dan is saying. Thank you.
I think we should probably wrap things up. Thank you very much.